On a cold Christmas Eve, in a quiet snow-covered village nestled deep in the English countryside, a strange visitor knocks on the door of an old manor house. And what follows is a mystery that has stayed buried for nearly a century. This is the Midnight Visitor. Christmas Eve wrapped the small village of Briarbridge in soft falling snow, the kind that seemed to hush the world and make every sound feel far away. At the edge of the village, standing alone among frosted pine trees, sat Briarbridge Manor, a grand, aging estate with tall windows that glowed faintly with candlelight. Inside, Eleanor Whitcombe, the last surviving member of the Whitcombe family, sat beside the crackling fireplace wrapped in a wool blanket. She was in her mid-30s, calm-faced, and carried a quiet loneliness in her eyes that winter only deepened. Her parents had passed years ago. Her brother, Jonathan, had disappeared even earlier, on a Christmas Eve just like this one, nearly 20 years past. No one ever discovered what happened. The village called it a tragedy. Some whispered the manor was cursed. Eleanor simply called it grief. As the clock in the hallway chimed 10, she stood to pour herself some tea when 3 slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the manor. Eleanor froze. Visitors were rare this far from the village, especially on Christmas Eve, especially during a storm. The knocks came again, soft, measured. Eleanor hesitated, then lit a lantern and walked toward the grand front door. Snowdraft whispered through the cracks. The wind outside howled faintly like a distant voice. When she opened the door, cold air swept inside, and standing on the doorstep, shivering under a layer of snow, was a young man. Maybe 30, pale, breathless, wearing an old-fashioned wool coat and scarf that looked a little too vintage. "Good evening," he said, voice trembling. I'm sorry to intrude on Christmas Eve. My car broke down on the road nearby, and I lost my way in the snow." Eleanor studied him carefully. His eyes were strikingly familiar, though she couldn't place why. "Please," he said softly. "It's freezing. Could I come inside, just until the storm clears?" Her better judgment told her this was a bad idea. A stranger, on a night like this? But something in his voice, gentle, polite, almost pleading, unsettled her in an odd, nostalgic way, as though she somehow knew him. Against her instincts, she stepped aside. "Come in." The man nodded gratefully and stepped into the warmth. Snow melted from his coat, dripping onto the floor in tiny puddles. "Thank you," he murmured. "My name is Nathaniel." Eleanor froze. Nathaniel, her brother's middle name. She shook the thought away. Coincidence. It had to be. She led him to the fireplace. He sat down, holding his hands toward the flames. "Not many houses out this way," he said quietly. "Is this Briarbridge Manor?" "It is," Eleanor replied. "It's been in my family for centuries." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "As I thought." Something in the way he said it made a chill crawl along her spine. After warming up, Nathaniel accepted a cup of tea. He held it between his hands, seemingly comforted. For a few minutes, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly. Snow tapped against the windows. Then Nathaniel looked around the room, eyes slowly drifting across the portraits on the wall. "These are your ancestors?" he asked. Eleanor nodded. "The Whitcombe line. They've lived here since the 1700s. Nathaniel stood and walked to a portrait of a young boy with dark hair and thoughtful eyes. The same portrait Eleanor had looked at every day for 2 decades. Her brother, Jonathan. Nathaniel stared at it for a long time. "This boy," he whispered. "He looks familiar." Eleanor nearly dropped her teacup. "How could he possibly look familiar to you?" Nathaniel didn't answer. He simply studied the painting with an expression of sorrow. Eleanor's heart pounded faster. No, not possible. Jonathan disappeared 20 years ago. He'd be in his mid-30s now, around the age of this stranger. "Do you have siblings, Nathaniel?" she asked carefully. He turned toward her slowly. "Yes," he said, "I did. A sister." "Did?" He looked at the floor. "She lost me, a long time ago." Something deep inside Eleanor tightened. Her throat felt dry. "That's very sad," she managed. Nathaniel's eyes glistened faintly. It was Christmas Eve. The room felt suddenly colder. The fire flickered. Eleanor tried to calm her racing pulse. Coincidence. Just coincidence. But then Nathaniel pulled something from his coat pocket. A small silver locket. Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. She knew that locket. She had given it to Jonathan on the morning he disappeared. "I found this," Nathaniel said quietly, "on the road. I think someone dropped it." He handed it to her gently. Eleanor opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a tiny sketch of the manor, drawn by her brother as a child. Her vision blurred. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "where did you really come from?" He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled sadly. A smile she hadn't seen in 20 years. A smile she knew too well. The wind howled louder outside. Shutters rattled. Branches scraped against the roof like fingernails. Nathaniel walked slowly toward the window and watched the snow swirl in frantic circles. "Storm's getting worse," he murmured. "This kind of snow, it hides things." "What things?" Eleanor asked, voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel turned toward her. "Moments, people, places." He paused. "And sometimes, entire lives." Eleanor backed away. "Stop speaking in riddles. Who are you?" Nathaniel exhaled softly. "I've been trying to find my way home," he said. "For years." Eleanor's voice cracked. "Jonathan?" But Nathaniel shook his head. "No, not Jonathan, but connected to him." "What do you mean?" Nathaniel walked toward the fireplace and knelt, staring into the flames. "Your brother didn't vanish alone," he whispered. "There was another child with him." Eleanor froze. Her parents had never mentioned another missing child. The village never spoke of one. "What child?" she demanded. Nathaniel's voice lowered. "Me." Eleanor's hands trembled uncontrollably. "That's not possible, is it?" He studied her quietly. "Do you remember every detail from that night?" She tried, but her memory of that evening was foggy, blurry. She remembered her brother walking into the snow, but nothing about Nathaniel. Nathaniel continued. "Your brother found me wandering outside the manor. I had run away from a traveling orphanage caravan. No one cared where I'd gone. No one came looking." He swallowed hard. "Jonathan didn't know who I was. But he took my hand and told me I'd be safe." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "And then," Nathaniel stared into the fire. "The storm swallowed us." The fire dimmed. The storm roared louder, as though reacting to Nathaniel's words. "We walked until we couldn't see the manor," he said quietly. Snow fell so thick we could barely breathe. Eleanor stepped closer, drawn in despite her fear. "Jonathan tried to find the way back, but the wind kept pushing us off course." And then, the world went silent. "Silent?" she echoed. Nathaniel nodded slowly. "No wind, no footsteps, no sound, just a white void." He swallowed. "And something watching." The room seemed to tighten. The shadows near the ceiling deepened. Eleanor whispered. "What was watching?" Nathaniel's voice went soft, trembling. "A figure in the snow. Tall, motionless, like a man-shaped shadow made of frost." Eleanor shuddered. "We tried to run," Nathaniel continued. "But Jonathan slipped. I tried to pull him up, but the snow beneath us shifted. He closed his eyes. And we fell." "Fell?" Eleanor whispered. "Yes," Nathaniel said, "into a hollow beneath the ice. A frozen riverbed." Eleanor covered her mouth, horrified. "He hit his head," Nathaniel whispered. "He didn't move again." Eleanor felt tears stream down her face. "But you survived," she said. Nathaniel shook his head. "No." The fire crackled softly. "I didn't survive either." Eleanor stared at him. He looked back at her with eyes that shone with sorrow, and something otherworldly. "I froze beside him," Nathaniel said gently. "And when I woke, the world was different." The room seemed unreal. Light flickered oddly. Cold seeped into Eleanor's bones. "You're not alive," she whispered. Nathaniel smiled faintly. "Not in the usual sense." Eleanor backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. "You're a spirit, ghost, spirit, memory, call it what you like," Nathaniel said softly. "I've been wandering for years, trying to find my way back here. To tell you the truth." "Why now?" Eleanor whispered. "Because tonight," Nathaniel said, "the storm returned. The same kind of storm that took Jonathan." Eleanor closed her eyes, tears spilling. "Is Jonathan with you?" Nathaniel hesitated. "No," he whispered. "He didn't wander. He crossed." "Crossed? The boundary," Nathaniel said gently. "He moved on. I didn't." Eleanor sobbed quietly. "I miss him." Nathaniel stepped closer, his presence warm though he cast no shadow. "He missed you, too." Suddenly, a loud knock thundered through the house. Once, twice, 3 times, just like the night Jonathan vanished. Eleanor gasped. Nathaniel stood perfectly still. "Who is that?" she whispered. Nathaniel didn't answer at first. Then, "It's for me." He turned toward the door, his expression peaceful. "The blizzard comes for all things left unfinished." Eleanor grabbed his arm, and her hand passed right through him. "No," she cried. "Don't leave." Nathaniel looked back at her, eyes soft. "I didn't come here to stay. I came to give you the truth, so you could finally stop waiting for your brother to come home." Tears streamed down her face. "Will I ever see him again?" Nathaniel smiled sadly. "One day, but not tonight." The knocking came again, soft now, inviting. Nathaniel walked slowly toward the front door, and as he reached it, his body began to blur, like snow dissolving into mist. He placed a hand on the doorknob, though it passed through faintly. "Goodbye, Eleanor," he whispered. The door opened on its own. Cold wind swept through the manor, and Nathaniel stepped into the storm. For one fleeting moment, Eleanor saw him standing beside a tall, shadowy figure made of shimmering frost. The figure bowed its head to her gently, and then both vanished into the swirling white. The storm softened, the night grew calm. Eleanor awoke in her armchair, blanket wrapped around her, the fire still glowing softly. Had it all been a dream? She rose slowly and walked to the front door, and there, lying half buried in snow, was Nathaniel's locket. Exactly where he had stood. She picked it up, held it to her chest, and whispered, "Goodbye." The snow fell peacefully now. Morning light broke through the clouds, and for the first time in 20 years, Eleanor felt something settle inside her. Not emptiness, not dread, but peace. She stepped back into the warmth of Briarbridge Manor. And on Christmas morning, the world finally felt whole again. Thank you so much for listening to tonight's story. I hope The Midnight Visitor brought you a sense of calm, warmth, and just a touch of winter mystery. If you enjoyed this tale, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or join me again for more soft-spoken stories to help you relax, unwind, and drift peacefully into sleep. For now, take a slow, gentle breath. Let the quiet of the night surround you, and rest deeply. Sweet dreams and Merry Christmas.